So you have a tender read and you love overlanding. You have plans to do it big on the trails and some super glamping. One ideas, deep news and reviews, a podcast the first rate and here just for you. You don't have to think about it, join us and be about it. Something interesting we want to hear about it, come on let's talk about it. Welcome to Waypoint Overland's Random Waypoints Podcast.
Sponsored by Midland, communication for every adventure. The industry leader in radio communication technology and innovation for over 50 years. Sponsored by MyMedic. Sponsored by Tembo Tusk. Sponsored by Shower Pouch. Sponsored by DeMoss Collective, mission built and made for mobility. Sponsored by BrewTrek. Sponsored by Hard Impact Designs.
Always remember, the opinion you follow should be your own. Just consider the things stated here to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online.
Hey, what's up, Mike?
Not too much, Phil. Good to be on here again. Another episode of randomly where we're gonna go.
Well, you weren't randomly going anywhere you want to go the past couple of weeks. Talk about your bike ride. I am very curious.
I just got back from doing what they call the Baja Divide Cape Loop, which in the scheme of things doesn't sound like a lot. It's only about 250 miles. We rode, it's off-road. It's a lot of climbing, and it took us 11 days. I've got a 9-part video series coming out on the adventure on YouTube, starting next week, actually. And
that's going to be crazy. I got to watch that.
It will be a little bit crazy. It was a super tough ride. So, definitely type 2 fun. It's funny and it's good stories after you do it, but during it, it's misery.
So shout out to Eric.
Yep. Eric was my partner on that one again. This is 2 years in a row now. And we'll see what happens in the future if we ever do it again.
So is there a Baja Divide 3 coming next year?
Oh, I don't know. We'll see.
Hey, bro, I didn't think you were going to ever do that again. So I was shocked that you went right back at it the next summer.
Yeah, the only thing I would say is it was a little more manageable mentally because we knew it was shorter. Last year when we left San Diego and we knew it was going to take months to come down this thing, it was tough. It was tough every morning waking up knowing that you had months of this left, So that part was maybe a little bit easier this year, but it was still tough.
So when is the first show going to come out?
Episode 1 comes out next Tuesday, I believe it's April 16th. And basically we're going to do an episode. There's an episode. We filmed so much that there's an episode for each day of our trip coming out. That's kind of how it's going to work. It's going to be a daily thing.
I like those better.
Yeah. So, it's start to finish from when you wake up to when you go to bed. That's kind of how every episode's going to be. And it was a lot. We did a lot of filming on the bikes and it was a good experience. I think I did a better job of filming it. It was a harder ride and we mentally almost quit on day 3. I'll give you the sneak preview of that. After day 3, we almost put the white flag up and quit. But we did a better, I feel like anyways, you'll have to see when you watch it. We did a better job, I think, of filming it and bringing like what we were going through to the screen, I think.
So, I'm very interested in the behind the scenes of stuff. You say that it was better quality. Was it new equipment? Was it just putting in more effort and time?
I think it was more effort and time. And last year, the problem was I produced the videos while we were on the trip. So they were going out somewhat live. So I was taking time on off days to, edit and release the videos. This time we just recorded and all the editing and all the post-production's happening since I got back. So I just filmed. And no, we set it up with, we basically filmed with two GoPros, a Insta360 camera, and two iPhones, and a mini DJI mini drone. And that's what we film with. So all fairly new equipment, but nothing fancy. No, obviously, because we're on a bicycle, so you can't carry any heavy gear. I didn't even take microphones. I didn't even take my little Rode, lapel mics. I didn't take any of that because I tried to go light.
I've been getting a bunch of emails, and when I say a bunch, not a bunch, but I've been getting some emails about why don't I cover the national parks anymore. So I want to address that early on in the podcast. First of all, I didn't think anybody was going to notice. I didn't think that was that important of a segment. It was kind of like a big deal to me personally. But the reason why I have not been covering the national parks is because I'm not supporting people going to the national parks anymore. I'm not pushing people or encouraging people to go to the national parks anymore. It has become like going to Disneyland. And I mean that in every sense of the word, from parents having to think about the economics of taking the trip. It is expensive to take a family of four, I mean 2 kids, a husband and a wife, to go to a national park. So I have refrained from encouraging people and making that as something enticing, because it has actually become something that is out of the way of the average person. And that is sad.
Well, particularly because it's public land, right? So our access, it's interesting. My perspective, I'm down here in Mexico, and the national parks are all free. So it's a different scenario. And I understand in the States, we went through the pandemic, and there was problems with attendance. And by the way, it still is. I saw somebody post, I think it was yesterday or the day before, on Instagram, and it was a ginormous line at the national park. Like I'm talking hours line to get in. And I'm not dissing the quality of the parks or the land or the scenic rating of them or whatnot. But I will tell you from experience, there are a lot of places in America to see that are just as good as the national parks, oftentimes near them.
So a good tip, anybody listening, there's generally at least a state park adjacent usually to a national park. That's been my experience. And the state park is usually far better. And if you're camping, formal camping at a campground, the campgrounds are usually much nicer at the state park than the national park. So even if you do go to the national park, I would stay at the state park.
Yep. I agree with that.
But it's a reoccurring theme with me that you can't put off these trips, these ideas, these journeys if you can, because the idea that you have in your mind of them, by the time you execute them, it may be a totally different experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been thinking about some of the experiences that I have had at national parks. You cannot have that experience anymore. It does not exist. The things that were bucket list 5 years ago are not bucket list now. Something simple as going to Yellowstone and going to Old Faithful. It's not the experience it was 5 years ago. It's certainly not 10, 20 years ago. There's literally, you have to schedule to be able to park in the parking lot. Like I think it sometimes goes like 5 or 6 times the geyser goes up. You have to, like, in advance, make reservations to park, to walk over, to go to it. That's crazy. That's like going to not McDonald's, Disney World.
Yeah, it's like, sure. It's like going and it's like going on a ride. I look at it the kind of the same way. It's very formalized now with tickets and organization and online scheduling and fees. But even when you're there, the experience is different. You're farther away from stuff more often than not. There's more fences. There's more clutter, quote, in your picture. It's not as natural, I guess, is the best way to say it. It doesn't appear that you're looking at something as natural as it once was.
And there actually was a time recently where you still could go to a national park and find some place in the park to be alone. That's pretty hard to do now. That's really hard to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Yellowstone might be an exception to that only because the park is so huge, but certainly not in those particular popular areas that you're talking about.
Well, I just wanted to say that out loud because I've gotten enough inquiries as to why no national park news. It's because I'm really down and out on the national parks. And here I go, getting a little political, and I'm talking about whatever team you're on, neither side takes care of the national parks. Neither side treasures our national treasures. So that's obvious from the fact that you have to have all these fees, where really our tax dollars should be going to that in the first place, so it's not what happens. And I just keep thinking about, my kid's grown, but I just keep thinking about the family man who maybe wants to see Firefall at Yosemite. Mm. First of all, let's say you live in Sacramento. You got a 4.5 hour drive just to get to the area. You're going to have about another 2 hours of waiting to get into the actual park. You're going to drive for about another hour to maybe even longer now. That might have changed. At least an hour to get to where Firefall is. Right. And when you get there, you're going to have somebody's shoulder literally right here next to yours, a camera right here. You know what I mean? Oh, yeah. So it literally takes a day of driving to get to it. Yep. For that family, it's going to including gas, entry fees, feeding your family. You're talking about spending a whole day getting there and maybe spending several $100s to see a waterfall. That's crazy. Yeah, and you have to stay there too. So then that comes in the lodging and whatnot. Most people don't even consider the lodging now. To stay in those lodges, that's like you might as well say, "Hey, I'll drive in to San Francisco and go to the Ritz-Carlton." Yeah, pretty much. They want like $250 for a raggedy room. Yep. And that's the last time I looked. It may be more. It may be in the $3s. Yeah. But let me quit ranting about that, man. Did you hear about the cruise lines having to be rerouted because of the bridge? Did you even hear about the bridge in Baltimore? I did. I know I've been over that a number of times, and yeah, it's crazy. I mean, the odds of it happening are obviously fairly small because if the boat had the issue that it did and lost power and control, I mean, if it had done that, I don't know, 3 minutes later or something, it would have been missed the bridge, right? But yeah, no, and that's that port is interesting. The Port of Baltimore brought in several overland trucks from Europe in through there. That's just where I was headed. It's a pretty busy port. It's a busy port for vehicle entry. And, it's over the last, I don't know, maybe 10 or 15 years, it's become a busier port, actually. It's taken a lot of some of the volume off of, New York, New Jersey, metropolitan and various different places. So Baltimore was, it's a devastating incident. Obviously they're going to, at some point, get it cleared to get traffic back in. But man,
I tell you what, driving around there, that's a nightmare without that bridge.
Oh yeah, I've gone across that bridge. It didn't feel safe driving across it when it was nothing wrong with it.
Well, I mean, it leads you to wonder, though. Like I was reading stories about that, how they build modern bridges nowadays where they have buffer zone, they build almost like an island around the thing. So in the event that something was coming, it wouldn't hit the structure of the bridge. Obviously, these older bridges, once again, it goes to the infrastructure in the United States, is most of it's pretty damn old, honestly, bridges and roads and stuff. So these kind of things, unfortunately, probably is not the last time it's going to happen.
So people are probably wondering, what the hell does this have to do with overlanding travel and nomadic people?
I'd hate to be the guy with the truck they were bringing in. It was on one of those containers that was at the bottom of the river.
Or you could have been in harbor with your stuff in a crate, ready to go, and
not going anywhere.
Right.
For a long time. We're talking probably months.
And I don't know the exact number. There aren't many port of calls for canisters to go to certain places. No. So it's less than 5, right? Would you say?
On the East Coast, pretty much there's, in America, it's Rhode Island, Quonset, Rhode Island. You got Newark, basically New Jersey, New York, Baltimore. There's something else in the southern, I think, but maybe not. Not many. I mean, Halifax in Nova Scotia in Canada. There's not that many.
Yeah. So some of these routes are going to literally require going to the other coast.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm seeing the cost of goods going up. I'm seeing the ability or inability to travel being increased. This Baltimore thing is going to snowball. We really have not seen the effect of it. There's a lot of
this has all been going on since the pandemic, right? First we had that going on, and then we had the price of shipping going up, and then you had the container shortages, you had containers stuck in the water. Now we got basically the Suez Canal, for all practical purposes, is closed. Because you can't, nobody's taking boats through there, and going to get attacked by missiles or whatnot out of Yemen. So you got that, and then you got Baltimore going on the East Coast U.S. So no, it's challenging for sure. Travel in general right now. I was telling somebody this the other day. It's maybe something that we're going to talk about at Overland Expo. Actually, international overland travel right now may be the most challenging that it has ever been. And this is coming from somebody that I have traveled on, 5 different continents and many, many different countries and ship trucks and whatnot. I will tell you today, I looked at a map. We were having this discussion a little bit. Just a backstory of this. Azure, who is the director of
Azure.
Director of programming and whatnot for Overland Expo, was down here last week, and we were doing some filming, which we'll talk about that sometime later. I can't know if I can talk about what it was yet, but in any case, we were discussing travel and going around. She's had experience, and one of the other guys that was here had experience just traveling around, and we were talking about between Russia and Ukraine, and now you've got Ecuador, which is, like, for years was sort of one of the entrances to South America, and it was stable as anything, right? One of the most stable countries in the world. It's a no-go right now. Central America, there's certain issues going on for sure that are now getting worse because of Mexico and Ecuador, and that's a whole other political conversation. But Mexico just pulled their embassy out of Ecuador. I mean, that's how bad it is. So you've got a lot of stuff going on from shipping. We're talking about with Baltimore and Suez Canal and all this stuff. So there are issues if you are a world traveler, for sure. And by the way, let's just go take it all back around. That partly goes back a little bit, probably affects what you're just talking about with national parks, because now you've got people that potentially that were going somewhere that are now stuck in the United States. And what are they going to do? They've got to go do something. So national parks are probably the most marketed of the places to go, right? So what happens? They get impacted first because they're the busiest.
And with that same psychology, you could flip it back over to international travelers. We're always thinking about Americans going somewhere. With all of the uproar, it makes America more attractive to come visit. So
That's
we're
right.
going to, I believe we're going to get a lot more international travelers from everywhere focusing on America.
I can tell you, I've seen that just being down here in Baja for the last 6 months. The amount of Europeans that have come with overland rigs of all shapes and kinds, and most of them have come in through Canada and transited through the United States. So it's increased considerably over last year of how many people from Europe have visited the United States with a vehicle.
And like I said, I think it's going to increase. And I think there's even a safety strategy for some of the travel here. If you are a person who grew up in Europe, you know the history. Just because they're fighting over here don't mean it won't eventually end up over here. So a lot of people are really trying to get away from war.
Yeah. And there's a lot of them going on, and I guess there's always wars going on, but there's some pretty hot ones going on right now. That are unfortunately affecting key locations. Just take the two biggest conflicts that we hear about in the news all the time in Russia and Ukraine. That's a key element between getting through the Silk Road and going across, transiting from Europe into Asia. And then you've got the conflict that's going on in the Gaza Strip, which is significantly affecting transiting of goods through the Suez Canal. And also a lot of overlanders, more so non-Americans, tend to transit on the east coast of Africa up through the Middle East and then back into Europe. So that's an issue too. Now more so for other nationalities than even Americans.
Well, that's like the immediate danger almost. But if you're in Africa, there's so many resources, and that's primarily why the issues over there are happening, because of resources. I can see the wars over there getting to the point where some of the other countries that have nothing to do with it but have resources become involved, whether they want to or not.
Yeah, and that's happening. Unfortunately, in West Africa, that is the case. With Nigeria and Niger and Mali and Mauritania, and it's a lot of the countries that I've traveled through on the Western side, they've all sucked each other into these things. And that's been, that's a challenge as well. So not to be totally depressing today, but, travel is tough particularly for me, who set out to do a around the world trip. And I'm obviously I'm stuck here. I got stuck in Baja and kind of fell in love with the area. But I've been in extensive discussions now to continue on to the mainland of Mexico, which is looking more and more likely. However, it's very in question how quickly that happens, or not how quickly I go to mainland, but how quickly the transit continues from there. I think it's realistic right now as we speak that, you can spend a fair amount of time in mainland Mexico and Central America. But the prospect of getting out of Central America right now is almost simply not worth it. It's just not worth it. It's too difficult. There's too many places in the northern part of South America that are no-goes. And the transiting between around the Darien Gap and stuff has become so challenging that it's and expensive that it's questionable whether it's just not the right time. I guess that is the best way to say it. Because if you've got problems in continuing problems, obviously in Venezuela, you've got issues going in Colombia now that have reflared up that are related to the Ecuador thing, and then you got Ecuador's taken out of the picture here as well. I mean, hell, they just killed I don't know how many people, like just innocent bystanders, and the youngest mayor in the world or whatever, they took her out. And I mean, this is random violence going on everywhere. It's obviously simply not worth it. So you take out all of that, it becomes less of a quote Pan-American journey when you have to skip large sections of things. So it's just questionable. It's just bad timing, I guess. Things are cyclical. So will it fix itself at some point? Probably, but right now it's not so good. So we'll see.
I think it's cyclical too, but I think we might not be around when it gets back to that time, bro.
Fair enough. I don't disagree with that. Yeah, I don't disagree.
It's getting really, really bad to the point where let's just think about when we were young and how we grew up. Different races here, different cultures, different sides of the country here. But I bet we have the similarity that we often heard, you need to get your stuff together. You need to save, and don't just save for now, but consider things that could happen. Mm-hmm. And then as you get older, you start saying to yourself, well, I need this amount of money, and this should be okay. And I need this amount extra money in case something really bad happens. It'll probably never happen, but if there's ever a plague or a war, well, damn it, we've had both.
And the target's moving. Well, I mean, we can't even move the shotgun fast enough to keep up with it.
So it's like most people who even said, well, I'm planning for the future correctly and following the way we thought was the best way, we've already had all of those calamities already. So if you're 40 years old or 50 or 60 and you still got a long length of time, I envision people coming back into the workforce that were solidly retired. I see people getting off of the road and living like a completely different life in the years to come.
Yeah, it absolutely is possible. So we'll see. I mean, I don't know. I'm very curious what the vibe's going to be this year. I had actually anticipated not being in the States and not going to Overland Expo, which it was leaked out a couple of days ago that I will be at the Overland Expo in Flagstaff. May, I don't know what the day is. I think it's 16th to 18th or somewhere in that vicinity. I'd be curious to what it's going to look like this year. Is there going to be any changes? Is it going to be status quo? Is there going to be discussion about some of this? I don't know.
That's the part that I'm interested in hearing what the formal panels have to say about, or are these things even addressed?
Right. I think some of it will be. I know we talked about it with, like, in the past couple of years, I've been doing the panels for BAJA and for Mexico. And I think there's going to be some discussion about it for sure. And, I know I've had a number of friends. It's interesting. I've had a number of friends on the mainland Mexico this season, and some of them have transited even through parts of Central America. The one thing that I'm going to tell you that I've noticed, and I'm going to definitively say that it's a change from how it used to be, or maybe it's just their way of traveling. But I've noticed that most of the people that I know have changed their mode of travel a lot. And I've noticed that they've stayed largely at campgrounds. And
what do you mean when you say they've changed their mode of travel?
Well, I think a lot of these people that I'm familiar with tend to, and certainly when they were over here in Baja or in the States, were boondocking. They were staying on BLM land. They were boondocking, in the woods, in wherever outside of Redmond, Oregon. When we went to Overland Expo, or certainly here in Baja, I've been boondocking here for 6 months. I noticed that most of them, if not all of them, have largely spent almost all of their nights in established campgrounds, both in mainland Mexico and throughout Central America. I have a limited traveling experience through a bunch of those countries, but I have driven in some of them. And I remember I boondocked in a lot of them, in a lot of different places on beaches and whatnot. So I don't know if it's changing, if it's a security thing, if it's just a changing mindset, if it's those just maybe happen to be the people that I know who went and that's what they chose to do. I don't know. So I'm curious about that. I'm curious about I'm kind of excited actually to go to Expo to talk to some people that have come back that have spent a better part of the winter in Central America and mainland Mexico and see what their thoughts are. Because obviously that's where I'm planning on going next.
Well, I think it's everything that you said. I think it's one part convenience, one part security, one part changing. Things are changing. I think it's everything that you said.
Yeah, it could very well be. So we'll see about that. But for the sake of discussion, you and I have talked a lot about cost, right? And what things cost to do. We were just talking about national parks. So obviously, if you're not boondocking and you're paying for established campgrounds on a daily basis, that changes your cost considerably, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe some of them are cheap, but still. So it's just something else to weigh, for somebody that's planning on doing a trip or planning on going somewhere, what is their cost? Hell, I think we talked about this maybe on the last podcast. Right now, the price of fuel down here in Mexico is higher than California. So that's just unheard of.
The fuel was always the thing everybody said, Phil, don't worry about that part. It's cheap the whole trip down.
Not anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It's cheap in the places that you don't want to and can't go.
Right.
So Venezuela right now, you can get gas almost free, but you don't want to go there. So, it doesn't do you any good. So we'll see. Yeah. There's a lot of people I could tell you from, my Patreon followers. Right now I'm consulting, I think, with 32 different people that are building overland rigs of many different sizes and shapes. But so I will tell you with my finger on the button there's a lot of people that are still getting into it or building trucks. So that isn't, well, at least from my vision, has not slowed down. So presumably they're going to, or at least I encourage them to go out and finish the thing and go do something with it. And hopefully they will. But
I could be wrong, but from the small sample size that I have of it, it seems like that's increasing too because of economics. People are like, spend $80,000 on a new vehicle or spend $20,000 and put $20,000 in it.
Yeah. Yep, that is also true. And economically, you and I have talked about this before. Some of the van life overland movement was pushed by the fact that people couldn't afford homes anymore, or they were pushed into vehicles, or be pushed into being nomads because they just couldn't afford to be on the road, or pay overhead and had to go on the road because they had no choice.
Yeah, I'm going to have to start intersplicing stuff that we predicted into the podcast, because we talked incessantly about how there was going to be a market coming soon of these vans for sale. And it's actually started sooner than we said.
Yep.
A lot of these vans, I'm seeing them on sale. People are trying to give them away.
Yep. Well, because it's a mess. There's a percentage of people that got into it that just it is not a lifestyle that everybody can handle. And it is not the roses and, daisies and flower gardens that it's portrayed on Instagram. So I think that was some of it. And then some of it is people, their lifestyle has either changed. Maybe they found a job and now they can afford to go back into a more traditional home, or maybe they got worse and they can't even afford this van anymore, or whatever it is. But yeah, there's a lot on the market.
And another reason why this is turning out to be such a sad story, and nobody talks about this. Nobody talks about this. But a lot of people who got into the van life signed a deal with the devil. And what I mean by that is, let me give you an example. I went to a very, very big, famous, popular van expo. I'm going to just leave it at that. And there were several of these van makers. They take those sprinters and they whatever.
Yep.
And several of them had the capability of, if you wanted to buy the vehicle, they'll have it delivered to your house before you make it home from the expo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with deals like 6-year deals or 10-year deals or no money down, or oh boy.
Oh, but no, this is the killer. I wouldn't even have a problem with a person buying $150,000, $200,000 vehicle and having a 10-year lease. I don't recommend it. I mean, not lease, but
purchase
right,
a loan. But
now, and I witnessed this. They were offering this lady, because I had to talk her out of it. She was going to have because it's such a high price, they have balloon payment structures now. So some of these people are literally buying these vehicles and hoping that they can come up with an idea that will give them income to pay for the vehicle. And they figure that they'll have the time to figure it out, or they'll create this they'll create this content and get popular or whatever. And you get the idea.
So yeah, it's like putting a covered wagon before the horse.
Yes. But believe a lot of these people who you thinking, oh, wow, they're living the life of luxury. Yeah. The devil is coming.
Yeah. No, that is actually true. I see it. You see it.
Yeah. The girl was maybe 25, 26 years old. She had made some good money, had decided she was going to leave the workforce, zero debt. And she was about to get talked into one of these balloon payment things.
Yeah. Scary.
So that was just at one event. And I see these same people at all the other events. So I'm assuming that they have the same kind of terms.
Sure. And there's a lot of them. There's a lot of companies out there. There's a lot of van company producers. There's a lot of overland truck producers. There's a lot of trailer producing companies. There's, and all of those things are big bucks, right?
Yeah, there are a lot of people who are paying a car note, and they have like 5 or 6 different other payments that they're making on their vehicle for a rack and for this and for that. If you haven't turned it into an actual business, these people are trying to keep up with people who are making a business of it, and they're out there financing these vehicles. So you have people driving around with Jeeps that are worth $150,000, and they don't own it.
Yep, I saw one of those that went off the cliff or something at somewhere in Texas, right at the adventure park. Did you see that?
I didn't see that, but ironically, I just sent you something in the mail.
I know, and that's the same park.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah, it was in the news.
Wow. So did you find out about that before the email?
I did, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I saw that in the news, and because they actually did a YouTube. The park, I think, did a YouTube on recovering the vehicle. Oof, you could barely tell it was a vehicle.
I haven't seen it yet. You remember when we did the first year of Overland Expo Pacific Northwest and you drove through Eastern Oregon?
Yep.
Well, all of that beautiful. You tell me, what did you think of Eastern Oregon as you were driving through it?
Well, it's amazing because it was not something that I guess when I thought of, preconceived ideas of Oregon and Washington, you think of you're immediately drawn obviously to the coast, right? The coastline and how it's going to be. You're not thinking high desert. You're not thinking any part of what you're seeing on that eastern side.
Well, the reason I asked you that is because that area that you drove through is now the home to the world's largest dark sky sanctuary. That whole eastern corridor of Oregon that you were in is now the most recent dark sky sanctuary.
Interesting.
So
that was an amazing drive, by the way, for anybody that's not done that. Highly recommend that. I forget where I came in from. I guess kind of
Idaho,
Idaho, Boise-ish area, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you said it right in the beginning. 7/8 of Oregon, nobody visits. They just,
that's right.
That slither of the coast, and pretty much the whole state is forest.
Yeah.
And lakes and beautiful mountains.
Yeah. Yeah, I really enjoyed it up there. I haven't set my schedule for the summer yet. I'm sure we'll be talking about what we're all up to coming up, and we'll have to talk about it.
So I think you'll appreciate this quirky piece of news I got, bro. I like your opinion on it. Okay.
Okay.
The American Ornithological Society dropped a bombshell on the birding community last week when it announced it would change the English and Latin names of all birds named after people. Approximately 152 birds in North America and 111 South American birds will be renamed. So any bird in Northern South America that has a human's name or, like named after somebody,
right? Yeah,
it's going to be given a new name.
And what was the motivation behind that? To confuse the hell out of everybody? I mean, what?
We keep ending up in politics somehow. This is one of those things, and I'm going to dance around this delicately, where we have a society now where they don't want to link anything to anything that possibly in history may have some kind of negative connotation now.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Because I don't want to get any deeper into it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it doesn't make sense, but yes, I understand it. The problem is then, I don't know, take it 100 years from today, they'll have to change the name again because some other societal thing changed.
Like I said, I don't want to get into the politics, and when people hear mine, they're always shocked because they think they know what I'm going to say.
Yeah.
But I believe history is history. You never dilute it.
Nope.
Some people win, some people lose.
It's the way it works. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, where's the end to it, right? I mean, you'd have to,
there is no
names
end.
Of cities and towns, and
they've been doing that. Have you?
I know, but I mean, you eventually we're going to run out of words. I think
it was Chicago a few years ago that renamed a whole bunch of schools because, just like what I'm saying, the person was considered great back then, but now in modern history, a statement they made or action they did or whatever, and it may truly be heinous or whatever, but I don't think you just wipe history.
Well, yeah. The problem is oftentimes they're doing it for a cause. The problem is like until nobody was thinking about it in the first place because nobody even related it to it. So now you're making a deal out of something that wasn't even a deal because nobody knew. I just heard this morning they're talking about the bridge in Baltimore. We're just talking about that. They wanted to change the name now. Who the hell knows what? I don't know. I don't even know. To be honest, I can't remember what the name is. I think it's named after a person, but same probably theory. I don't know. He did something wrong or who knows? I don't know.
I think everyone looks at it in an extremely selfish way about those type things. Like you would probably assume that I'm against Confederate statues and things like that. I'm against making it like it was a good thing.
Sure.
But tell the actual story and don't.
Yeah, it's a story. It happened.
Right.
You can't take away that it happened. It happened.
And you and I, whether you know it or not, have some friends from that lineage that we get along well with.
Right.
I'm not going to take away from him his history about his grandfather.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I
don't know. Maybe that's just crazy.
I don't know.
Because that don't seem like that's the majority's thoughts about things.
Well, I don't know. Unfortunately, oftentimes the silent minority wins most arguments.
Yes.
That's what happens. Right, wrong, or indifferent.
I meant to send you a video. You're familiar with Costco, right?
Yeah.
It's like the headquarters is about 10 minutes away from my house. It's their headquarters. It's all they originate from Issaquah. And the big news is that now, in order to go to any Costco and enjoy their food court, you have to have a membership.
Yep.
Have you heard about that?
To get their hot dog. Yeah, I know it's hard to believe, but I actually have a Costco within an hour of me here because there's one in Cabo San Lucas, which I've been to. I was there a couple of weeks ago.
Wow.
Yeah. And they have a food court outside, and you wait in line there to get your hot dog or whatever. And they want to, and they were talking about it even here. They're putting in a thing where you cannot go to even get the food without the membership card because it was unfair to members, creating lines and whatnot. And obviously there's people that are taking advantage of the super low prices on the food.
Well, it made me think about several different things. Like, for instance, the Costco here in Issaquah, directly across the street is the headquarters for Siemens. And there is a company called, I know you heard of Microsoft. Microsoft has one of their little satellite buildings with employees. And they all come over for lunch to that Costco because you just basically cross the street and they get to get outside and walk. It used to be just because of the convenience of it all.
Yep.
But now I don't just see those people, those employees coming over. I literally see families bringing their families to eat at the Costco because you can't eat anywhere else for $1.50.
No.
So there's two sides of this. There's one, Costco is like, we're basically giving this away. We're losing. There's in the world today, you cannot produce what they produce for $1.50. They're giving it away at a loss to its members. So I understand the business of that. But it is so sad that the reason why they had to make the decision is because they're being hammered so hard by people who need $1.50 meal.
Yeah. It's funny. It's similar to, obviously this is on a smaller scale, but IKEA, where I got my cabinets for the truck that I'm sitting in here. IKEA has their restaurant inside the IKEA stores too. Same thing. It's like you can go get a slice of pizza there for like, I forget, it's like, 55 cents or something. It's crazy cheap. The difference obviously is, I mean, it's attract people to, there's not a membership at IKEA, but it gets people in the store, right?
Right. Plus, you
It's the same
got
concept.
to walk through the maze to get to it. So
That's right. That's right. That's right. Yep. Yep. But yeah, no, I did hear that story. It's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Just some local news that I think is not just local news.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. It's indicative of the economy, I think. You know?
I'll send you the video of the Channel 5 News. They're talking to people in front of the court. And a guy, you see where he's dressed, his appearance. This guy is a middle-class dude.
Yeah.
And he's talking about, I take my kids here twice a week. He's incorporated going there twice a week as part of his grocery bill.
Yeah, because he probably gets out of it with his kids and the whole thing for, under $10 or something, getting $1.50 this, $1.50 that. Maybe he spends $10. You take the same family to McDonald's. And it's going to be over $50.
No, it's going to be way more, bro.
I mean, probably more. Wow.
Traveling through America, I've eaten at a lot of McDonald's. The average bill currently is about $16 for one person.
One person. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's true.
And I don't mean get everything you want.
No. You're basically getting a burger, fries, and a drink.
How is that possible?
It is. Yeah, I know.
And they don't do the Monopoly game no more.
No.
You used to get the tickets and get free food. They don't give you nothing at McDonald's. McDonald's is like a restaurant.
Yep.
The amount that you pay for McDonald's, you could add $4 or $5 more and sit down somewhere.
Yeah, true. And most of the McDonald's now, I could tell you from just crossing the United States this past fall with Jerry from Tumbo Tusk, when we stopped at about, you got to do the thing on the computer yourself. You can't even talk to anybody in there anymore. You got to order it on a screen. It's gotten that bad. We went to one with no people. I mean, literally, there's no people.
Right, bro. That computer stuff that you're talking about, I had a transition. It took me a while. Because it takes me 3 times longer to order. At least 3 times longer. You stand there looking at thing, not intuitive, doesn't make any sense. I think it confuses you on purpose, so you order shit that you don't want. And then from store to store, it's different. But most of the time, they just take your bag and put it on the counter.
Yeah.
And what do people do? They walk up and they do like this. And they looking in your bag.
Yeah. Yep. Oh yeah.
The guy that just came out the bathroom is like, "Is this my order?"
How about the biggest Overland news of today?
I'm listening.
The new 4RUNNER.
Oh, did you see it?
Today, yeah.
You usually don't be wanting to talk about vehicles. I would have started the show with that, bro.
I know I don't like talking about vehicles, but it's the news today, right?
Okay, so tell me, what do you think about it? Seriously.
Well, I mean, by now, I don't know. I assume it got leaked. I don't know if you saw the story this morning, but it got leaked by Forbes.
Yeah, it got leaked. Yeah,
that's what I saw. I haven't seen the.
That's what they say.
Yeah, I think it was planned. If you ask me, the whole thing was planned. But I actually kind of thought it looked pretty cool. I thought it looked nice. That was my opinion. I mean, it doesn't look drastically different than the last generation. I don't think it obviously it follows in line with their other vehicles, the front and stuff. It's similar. I don't know I didn't hear what the pricing is going to be or anything like that. Cause obviously, they also, with the Land Cruiser and all this, they've downsized the Land Cruiser. So that price is going to be lower. So I don't know how it's all going to fit together, but who knows?
So, bro, I'm going to clue you in about pictures like what the one you're talking about. And let me give you some background. Something you don't know about me. In the 80s, I worked at Fort Lewis, Washington on the transition of the Jeep and the Hummer to the Army.
Yep.
Worked with the research company and everything. So I know how they do these things. My father owned car dealerships, and I worked for my father and sold cars at one time. I know about this car business from many different angles. The design group does not work on computers that has access to servers.
Mm-hmm.
They're usually called dummy computers, specifically so that there's no possibility of leaks.
Yeah.
If they are able to communicate from computer to computer, it's called a intraweb, and it's just those computers connected. They have no connection to the outside. If they want to communicate or transfer something, they generally have to go to a separate computer to do it.
Right.
You following what I'm saying?
Yep.
I seriously doubt almost every time that I hear that something was leaked from a major company, because most of these companies have this. Any company that has a formal research and development portion of their company usually has these are basic protocols. This is nothing fancy. This is basic.
No.
So Toyota wanted us to know about that. Now, with that said,
well, it was being released today, anyways. I mean, supposedly. I don't know that I'm looking right now. I don't know if they actually have released it today or not. Now, I don't know.
It doesn't matter, because they probably got more fanfare about this picture than when they do the actual release. If you go on Instagram right now, almost everybody you know that owns a Toyota has posted those pictures on their Instagram.
Oh, everybody. Yeah, everybody. Yeah.
So tell me, how do you think it looks?
I think it looks good.
I think it's the best looking one since the 2016.
I'm somebody's going to hate me for saying it, but I wasn't a ginormous fan of the last one, because I didn't like the front. To me was a little too superhero-y, cartoony, with it had that like.
Oh, I know what you mean.
I don't know. I don't know.
For me, it's the same thing, but it doesn't look like when people buy a truck, especially men, they want the truck to have some truckness to it. They took all the truck out of it. Does that make sense? They took all the machismo out of the vehicle. They made it too elegant, in my opinion.
Yep.
That's why the Jeep has endured so long. People are like, that's an ugly vehicle. And they're like, that's why it sells.
That's right. Yeah. And they've learned, don't screw with it.
Mm-hmm.
Although I did see they have a new Jeep. Did you see the new Jeep coming out too? The
black something.
Well, no, I mean, but the new version, I guess. They've changed the interior a little bit. It's got a bigger screen and everything. I don't know. I don't know what year that is, but
you're talking about over all of the Jeeps, because they just
over all the Jeeps,
because they released a Jeep in because of the eclipse a couple of days ago.
Correct.
It's called the black something or the something black.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the screen being larger was needed, especially if they want to compete with other vehicles, because everybody's not caring about the capabilities as much.
Right. Yep.
That has been the selling point of, like, for instance, Toyota 4RUNNERs over a Jeep to a lot of people was, hey, I don't want that bumpy ride. I want to, still feel like I'm in a car.
Yep.
Have you ever
Anyways, so that was the news today.
Have you ever done any of the BDRs, Mike?
Yes.
On your bike?
No, on a motorcycle.
Right.
Yeah. I've done about half of the New England BDR.
Oh yeah, I remember.
And I've done some of the New Mexico one. Yep.
Well, they finally completed the California one.
Northern California. Yeah.
Yep. So now you can do Complete California, which I think is great.
Yep, I saw that.
So that means you can go from Mexico all the way to Canada now, off-road.
Yep.
I love the West.
I know. Yeah, me too. Yep.
So what time is it there, Mike?
It's the same time as you.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
We are we're Mountain Time, but Mexico does not change time. So Mountain Time and Pacific Time are the same. I am on California time.
Okay. What kind of plans you got for today? I know it's probably drinking and eating.
No, I think I'm going to do some work. I'm making more YouTube videos and just planning. I mean, I'm not going to be down here too much longer, so we're sort of starting to plan our northern journey, and we'll see what happens. Heading back. I call it unplanned. I'm heading back to the States to do a bunch of truck stuff. Like the truck is not where I need it to be. Just various stuff. I made a list of things, and I'm gonna have to spend some time mechanically and tires and some other stuff. So I got to get all that sorted out before I take it more long term down into Mexico or Central America.
The problems you're having, do you think those would have been issues if you had been able to go to South America? Yeah,
I think so. Yeah. I've got an engine oil leak. I've got, a starter problem that we're still trying to deal with. I've got, I had a tire blowout down here and I didn't switch, the tires are older and I think they need some replacing. There's just a bunch of little things that need work on the truck that the last truck, interesting. They're the same trucks, right? The last truck, really, knock on wood, I mechanically had almost no problems with, and obviously I had it for a while, and I tested it a lot. This truck literally got built, and the day after I was not even really done building it, I headed out to Overland Expo East. So it really has not been tested properly. It wasn't really completely finished. Some of the things I want to do on it. So I'm going to be largely based likely in, back in Arizona, New Mexico for a little bit. And then I'm going to make a determination as to how long I'm going to be up in the States, whether I do more testing, meaning drive to, Redmond and do Overland Expo, Pacific Northwest and stuff. That for me, it's worth doing just by, using the truck. So I gotta see what the schedule looks like. I don't know, but I will be at, like I said, I will be at Pacific, or I will be at Flagstaff.
I think the time crunch that you were under had a lot to do with the problems you might have now. Because I don't see some of the stuff slipping by you if you had more time.
Yeah, I was tight schedule, so I'm suffering some of that. So
what was the time frame that you got it done in? Because that was crazy.
Less than 4 months.
It was really shorter than that because
I didn't have it most of the time. Yeah, it was like a month and a half to 2 months of me really working on it. The rest of the time was, getting some fab done and some other stuff or painting, didn't have access to it for a week and a half or 2 weeks while they were painting it and stuff like that. So it was a tight schedule.
I was shocked to see how much of the vehicle you actually did the physical work on.
Almost all of it.
My hat's off to you, bro.
Almost all of it. But I'm not really having any issues with the part that I built. It's mostly the actual truck itself. So, and that's just to stay, look, it's a 2002. I got it with like 5,000 miles on it. So obviously it wasn't used very often in the military, and, it sat around a lot. So things happen when things sit around. So you got to address them.
What kind of time frame did it take for you to get a new tire?
It took me about a month to get one. Obviously it wasn't in a rush, but it took about a month to get the tire. And that is what I've determined is a weakness of this truck for two reasons. One, because it has 6 wheels, which means it has more tires. So it has more tires that could potentially fail. And if you only got one spare, as soon as you put that on, you have no spares. So if you were in, Nicaragua, and you get a flat tire and you have to acquire a tire, that's a weakness of this truck. It's a concern. So one of the things I'm going to be looking at is it possible to carry a second tire, a second spare, maybe not the wheel, but just the tire. So it's things I'm looking at. It's you and I have discussed this before. It's like putting on 40-inch tires on a Jeep or something, and then going to, expecting that you're going to be able to get that tire anywhere. Well, it's kind of, unfortunately, these big tires are some of the same problem where they're not easy to get. So you got to be a little more self-reliant. So that's a concern that I'm looking at. It's definitely an issue.
Thank you for expounding on that. That was the reason I asked you the question. That's why I ask you a lot of the crazy questions I ask. I feel like on certain things, you're a wealth of experience, and you can give people information that they ain't going to get in no book. People ain't covering, like, you should consider how many tires you have, what kind of tires you have, the cost, what is the total cost,
and how fast are you going to be able to get them? So like in my case, it took a month, a little more, maybe almost 5 weeks. If you have a schedule and you need to do stuff, and at times you got a problem if it's going to be, oh yeah, I can get that. It's be 5 weeks. For me, 5 weeks, big deal. I got a motorcycle. I'm camped down here. Who cares? I didn't care how long it took. So those are things to look at. I'll give you another example that's going on right this second. My buddy Kevin and Brenda, they have a 4-wheel drive Sprinter van. Mm-hmm. And like many Sprinter vans that you see out there, this actually is a Winnebago Rebel that you see with aftermarket things put on it. And they have a big box on the rear of the door, like it carries accessories in it and recovery gear and all that stuff. It's got the, traction pads and whatnot on it. Well, in any case, we were driving the other day, and it sounds stupid, but the little latch, the little loopy latch where the door closes and that the door has the little thing and it goes like this, the latch broke. Well, guess what? They can't secure their rear door now.
Oh boy.
Down here in Mexico. So they now spent the better part of the last 2 days trying to figure out if they get one sent down here, if they got one. Anyways, they just pulled out of here, like while we've been on the podcast, to drive the hour and a half down to San Jose del Cabo. They think they found a place that has this part. But this is like, so it's greatly out of their way to go get it and then come back. They're going to stay overnight. I mean, it's an ordeal, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It's probably a $4 part. But picture this. Are you going to drive your truck with the rear doors going, and then, on a dirt road and the dust is coming flying in? I mean, you can't continue on like that for very long. And you wouldn't think about that. That's something that you would not think about. Now, I told Kevin, I said, what the reason that this happened was, right? Because you've got a heavy box on the rear and it's got reinforced hinges on the hinge side, but on the inside, you're going down these washboard roads and the door's going like this. It's going to, well, of course it's going to get broke because you got extra weight on that door. And the engineers that designed it by Mercedes didn't anticipate the extra 75 pounds or whatever you got hanging on that door. Mm-hmm. We talk about this all the time, but anything that you change or modify, there's a repercussion. It's like a scale. You put something on this side of the scale, guess what? It affects what's on the other side of the scale. That's the way it works. And I get so many people tell me, oh, it doesn't matter really, blah, 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 blah. It's only, I hear this all the time. It's only, I put a couple action tracks on the roof. It's only 5-10 pounds. And it only, oh yeah, okay.
But nobody really gets into that 5 pounds.
5 pounds times 20 things is a lot.
Kinetic force.
Yep.
It's not 5 pounds.
No. Where it's located.
It's more probably around 100 pounds in a collision.
Distance. Yeah. It's all sorts of different factors. There's all sorts of stuff that goes into it. It's like anytime you modify anything. And like you said, you put 40-inch tires on a Jeep. Well, guess what? forget about this fact that you can't find 40-inch tires anywhere. What kind of wear and tear does that put on other things that are, that are involved in this? And you know what? It's only going to take a $2 bolt in somewhere underneath to fail.
Mm-hmm.
And you are stuck. And then who are going to blame this on? Probably your 40-inch tires.
So we're going to end this, but I want to end it with one last thing, since we're talking about this. Back in 2016, I had a neighbor. He no longer lives on the block, but I had a neighbor who, as a gift, bought me a complete tool set for my Jeep. And I carry it. I carry it everywhere. It has, talk about your tools, because usually when I'm traveling with a group of people, I'm usually the one going in a bag, somebody says, do you have this? Do you have that? And I'm always handing somebody something, which I hate doing.
Always doing it.
I love helping you, but I hate having to monitor my stuff. So what is your tool strategy?
My tool strategy is I got to have every tool that I need to fix anything on my truck that has a high likelihood or even a moderate likelihood of breaking. I mean, you got to have it. Like, so when I blow out my tire a couple of weeks ago, or whatever it was now, I guess it's 2 months ago, I needed to change it on a downhill incline, on a dirt road, on a dangerous corner. And in order to do that, I need an air jack. I need air tools. I need sockets. I mean, I got sockets up to 40 millimeter because this is a big truck. You need this, I got wood blocks to put under it. You got to have that stuff. Like, you can't just be like, well, you can't have a flat tire and then be like, well, I don't know. Do I have a jack? Or in my case, I got a hand jack. A hand jack isn't going to work on a truck like this. So you got to think through everything that can go wrong and where it's going to go wrong and how, and assume that you're probably going to be in the worst conditions trying to fix it.
I think tools and first aid kits are generally the weakest points on most people's vehicles.
Yep.
That's where they've spent the least money. They have the least of, and it's some of the most important stuff.
Yep. And I know people that have and I was probably one of these back in the day where you carried a ton of spare parts. And we particularly, I remember in Africa, I had carried a lot of spare parts, big ones, like big parts. Guess what? In doing this so many years, I can tell you it's almost never the big thing that fails. What if you're going to carry a bunch of stuff, carry all the little crap. It's the nuts and the bolts and that little stuff, because you can end up fixing big things by either rebuilding them or finding a local to do a weld or something. It's not the big stuff that generally fails. It's the little things that break.
And if you want to carry parts, have several of every fuse for your vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
You should be able to contain that in a little.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I got one of those fuse again on Amazon. I got a box of them, like, a plastic thing. I got both sizes because I got the big ones. And then I got the little, I don't know what they call them, the little ones for my motorcycle. I got fuses like, oh yeah.
That's one of the common things that changes a situation from costing you $5 to $500.
Yep. Because you got to get it towed because you didn't have a fuse. Yeah. It's, like I said, it's little stuff. It's stupid things.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure you got zip ties and duct tape too.
Mm-hmm. Well, Mike, I think that should be something we talk about when it's just me and you again on the podcast, because we got some guests coming up.
Sounds good.
The next one, we need to go into that further, because I don't think that we stressed the point strong enough. And there's a lot more detail that we could cover in this. And I think it's important because I get tired of seeing people on the trail and they have a totally decked out vehicle, but they don't have anything that they need.
Nothing. And not to end on a negative note, but they don't know how to use what they got.
Yes.
I got a winch. Oh yeah, I got a winch. I mean, I can tell you how many people we've helped pull out on the beach here. They got a winch. They got tow straps. Sometimes they got traction. They're using them all wrong. They don't know how to use them. They don't know how to turn the winch on. They're not doing it safely. And you go, oh God, oh, they got equipment, but they don't even know how to use it. Test it in your front yard.
It's weird that you bring this up because something that some additional content that I'm going to be creating for the channel coming up is going to be about knives. You know, me and Candy did a knife show. And since then, I have gotten so many requests and questions about knives that I'm going to cover some basic things. It's not going to be a long running thing, just a handful of things about knives. And what I have to contribute is the contrast in what knives a traveler explorer actually carries, and what these guys on YouTube that have these bushcraft channels,
right,
and survival channels, what they tell you and what they're carrying. I'm like, nobody really carries that. That would be too much work. They would just simply do that. They would. So I'm going to be coming up. I'm going to be posting several pieces of content on survival gear that people who actually go to jungles, who actually do travel and whatever, this is what they carry.
Yeah, good. Looking forward to that.
You got anything else you want to say, Mike?
No, I want to see everybody out there on the road, and I want to see you in our next podcast.
And something I want to say before I sign off is, this was really like a Debbie Downer, all of the topics that we talked about.
You know, maybe next week will be a positive week.
But for those who are aspiring to get out there and travel, don't look at this as a Debbie Downer. Look at it as we are distinguishing what are the issues, the obstacles, and impediments that might be in front of you, and tackle them. With that said, I want everybody to stay safe, tread lightly, and hopefully I'll see you here or on a trail soon.
You have been listening to Waypoint Overland's Random Waypoints. Like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more.